Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about army slots, from what are they and why you absolutely want them for your army, to how is this going to affect my army building. So let's take a look at army slots. Army slots, as you can see here, I have an Alliance Golden army slot here, which gives me +3 bonus levels. So yeah, you really want these slots for your minis, because when you put an Alliance mini into that slot, that Alliance mini is going to have 3 more levels than it usually does, and that is huge. The army slots require that you place minis with those specific traits into the slots, or the bonus is not activated. Here the bonuses are activated, all of these slots are bright. The slots would be grayed out if the bonus was not active, if the mini in the slot would not match the slot. The army slots are leader specific and they're earned from completing dungeons. You go into dungeon and it starts at level 5 and you do it, and then it becomes a level 6 and you do that, and so on and so forth, and you will have a full golden maximum army slots after you have cleared a level 22. There's apparently also platinum army slots coming in raids feature in 2024, but at this point we don't know what that means yet. As for the army slots themselves, each leader has 3 fixed slots, which are the top row slots. Those are always the same types of minis. And then there are 3 changeable slots, rerollable slots, the bottom row slots. And in those slots you can change what is being buffed in those slots. And changing them costs 250 arc energy. But do note that not all options are available. Some leaders cannot get some traits into those slots no matter how much you reroll, so don't waste your arc energy. Overall, there are 11 options for the bottom row slots. One is the leader's family, for example Horde. Well, you can't get other families though, you only can get your family. Then there's Cycle, Elemental, Fast, Flying, Ranged, Siege Damage, Spell, Squad, Tank, and Unbound. And for each leader, 3 of these options are unavailable. Each leader only has access to 8 options for each of their bottom row slots. You also need to have unlocked all of the army slots, at least at bronze level, before you're allowed to re-roll your slots. Other than that, the upgrade order doesn't matter too much. You're going to get them all upgraded eventually anyway, and the selection of the slots for the bottom row, try to pick something that you're currently playing with. You can always change it later. When you reroll one of those slots, you're offered 3 of the 5 available traits that are currently not selected in your bottom row slots. Remember, each leader has 8 traits available. 3 of them are already in use when you reroll, because you already have one in each of the 3 slots, and you can't have duplicates there. So there's 5 that are not present, and you're offered 3 of those 5 for each reroll. So it doesn't take many rerolls to typically find one of the eligible slots that are available. But you can easily spend thousands and thousands of arc energy if you're trying to find one that your leader is not capable of having, so better watch out for that. As for the specific leaders, not all leaders are equal, because the leaders can't get 3 of the slots, and then they have some slots that are fixed, which means that some leaders have no way to buff some of the minis in the game. Some leaders can buff every single mini in the game, so kind of not fair, but it's good to be aware of that. For example, let's go through all the leaders. Jaina Proudmoore. Fixed slots are Alliance, and Spell. The fixed slots are always 2 for the family, and then 1 some other thing. And Jaina cannot get on the bottom row Cycle, Fast, or Ranged. And that means that Jaina has no way to buff Banshee, which is an undead ranged mini. Jaina can't get undead, that's not her family. She can't get ranged. She can't buff Darkspear Troll, which is a ranged Horde mini. Can't get ranged, can't get Horde. And she can't buff Plague Farmer, which is a ranged undead mini again. That does also have the Cycle trait, but Jaina can't get Cycle trait either, so no way to buff Plague Farmer. 3 minis that Jaina just cannot buff in her army slots. And then there's Maiev Shadowsong, who has Alliance, and Unbound, and Maiev cannot get Elemental, Ranged, or Squad, which means that there's a whole bunch of minis that Maiev cannot buff, because Ranged and Elemental is such a great combo. Maiev cannot buff Banshee, Darkspear Troll, Firehammer, Flamewaker, Frostwolf Shaman, Necromancer, and Ogre Mage. Whereas Tirion, everyone's favorite, can get Alliance, Tank in the fixed slot. In the changing slots, Tirion cannot get Elemental, Fast, or Tank, but Tirion has Tank already in one of the fixed slots, and that means that because there are no minis that only have Elemental and Fast traits, they always have something else too. That means that Tirion can buff all minis in the game. The same goes for old Murk-Eye, Beast, Beast and Tank. In the changing slots, Murk-Eye can't get elemental siege damage or tank, but Murk-Eye also already has tank in the fixed slots, which means that Murk-Eye can also buff all minis in the game. In his fixed slots, Hogger has Beast, Beast and Cycle, and Hogger cannot get elemental siege damage or tank. And because there is a bunch of tank minis that are not beasts, that means that Hogger cannot buff Abomination, Harvest Golem, Molten Giant or Stonehoof Tauren. As for Charlga, Charlga has Beast, Beast and Fast. Charlga cannot get fast siege damage or squad, but she already has one fixed fast slot, so Charlga can buff all minis. General Drakkisath has Blackrock and Elemental, but Drakkisath cannot get siege damage, squad or tank, again that tank, which means that Drakkisath cannot buff Abomination, cannot buff Null Brute unless it has the Rabbit talent, because that also makes it a cycle mini. Cannot buff Harvest Golem, Footman, Stonehoof Tauren or Warsong Grunts, because of that combination of tank and squad means that Footman and Warsong Grunts are also out of reach for General Drakkisath. Rend Blackhand has Blackrock and Flying, and cannot get fast, spell or siege damage, which means that Rend cannot buff spell minis that have no other traits, which are Cheat Death, Execute and Polymorph. Cairne Bloodhoof has Horde and range slots, and Cairne cannot get ranged, tank or unbound in the changing slots, but Cairne already has one range slot. But that tank slot, that means that Cairne cannot buff Abomination, Null Brute unless it has Rabbit, Harvest Golem and Molten Giant. Luckily for Cairne, Stonehoof Tauren, which is also only a tank, is also a Horde mini, so Cairne can buff that one. And the same goes for the other Horde leaders, none of them can get a tank slot. Grommash has Horde and Squad, and cannot get elemental siege damage or tank, which means that Grom also cannot buff Abomination, Null Brute unless it's Rabbit, Harvest Golem and Molten Giant. And the same goes for Sneed again, Horde and siege damage, cannot get elemental siege damage or tank, so cannot buff these tanks. Abomination, Null Brute unless it's Rabbit, Harvest Golem and Molten Giant. And finally, the Undead leaders. Bloodmage Thalnos has Undead and Spell, and he cannot get flying ranged or siege damage, which means that Bloodmage Thalnos cannot buff a Darkspear Troll, which is a Horde ranged mini with no other traits. Baron Rivendare has Undead and Unbound, and cannot get ranged, tank or unbound. So not being able to get tank or Rivendare means that Rivendare cannot buff Darkspear Troll, Null Brute unless Rapid, Harvest Golem or Stonehoof Tauren. Rivendare can buff Abomination though, because Abomination is undead. So even though Abomination only has the tank trait in addition to undead, well, undead family, so goes well into Rivendare armies. And then there is Sylvanas Windrunner with Undead and Horde, the only leader who has family slots for two different families, Undead and Horde. Sylvanas cannot get elemental, ranged or siege damage, but because Sylvanas has both Undead and Horde slots, then all of the elemental ranged minis from Undead and Horde families are perfectly usable by Sylvanas. That means that Sylvanas only cannot buff Firehammer and Flame Waker. So overall, these army slots are super important. You really want to do dungeons to get them. When you get them for the first time, it doesn't matter too much what you pick, just pick something that you're already using and enjoy those minis gaining some levels. Once you get deeper into the game, and those army slot levels are really going to be crucial, then you can reroll the bottom row, and at some points you will have to plan your army for specific leaders, taking into account that some of the minis cannot gain a buff from the army slots, and you just have to know which leader has which restrictions when you're planning your army to make it just perfect. And I hope that this video has given you all the information that you need, first to get started with army slots, and then to plan them in more detail in a more advanced stage. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.